The Battle of Isandlwana was fought in 1879 and was the first major conflict in the Anglo-Zulu War. The governor of the Cape Colony, Sir Bartle Frere, had intentions of merging the various British colonies, Boer republics and African kingdoms into a confederation of South Africa under British rule. The Zulus, led by King Cetshwayo, were one of the most powerful tribes in Africa, and the British realised that unless the Zulus were defeated, confederation was impossible. After the Zulus committed numerous border incursions, Frere issued a series of ultimatums to Cetshwayo that included disbanding his army and paying reparations. The demands were ignored, and in January 1879, British forces invaded Zululand. On the day of the battle, the Zulu army had 20,000 men armed with spears and shields. Traditional Zulu War Tactics was the Horn of the Buffalo, where the formation of the chest would advance and the horns formation would try to envelop the opponent. On the day, the British at Isandlwana had about 1,700 soldiers armed with rifles, and they also had a couple of field guns. They were led by Colonel Pauline, and his mission was to defend the camp and wait for further orders. He was not expecting a battle, but he set a defensive position and sent some of his soldiers to the high ground as a lookout. The battle started when a small group of British and native soldiers under the command of Colonel Durnford began scouting the area. At first they saw nothing to concern them until they reached the edge of a valley and discovered 20,000 Zulus waiting for orders. The Zulus saw the British and immediately began their attack. The British quickly retreated and some of the group raced back to warn the camp. Part of the scouting party included some artillerymen with a rocket battery. The British were able to fire a few rockets, but this did little damage to the Zulus, and despite some resistance, they were completely surrounded and killed. Durnford's scouting party had retreated to an area in front of the British camp and would be resisting the Zulu left horn. At the camp, the first sign of the Zulu advance appeared when the Zulu chest formation emerged over the ridge. Colonel Pauline now pulled back his forces from the high ground and positioned his soldiers and 2 field guns in front of the camp in a thin and extended formation. The intense British fire inflicted big losses for the Zulus and was able to hold back their advance. Zulus of the right horn formation now appeared and also began attacking the British line. The right horn formation had split and a large group of Zulus hidden by the hills and ridges were making their way around to try and envelop the British forces. After a while, Durnford's small unit began running low on ammunition and he was forced to retire back to the camp. This action had left the British right flank exposed. The Zulus in the centre were taking such losses that many began crouching and laying on the ground to avoid British fire. This action had slowed down the Zulu advance, but they were commanded to renew their attack. The right horn had now emerged from behind the ridge and began attacking the British rear. The new advance from the centre and the enveloping action from the right forced the British back, and Pauline ordered a new, tighter British defensive line. But by this time it was too late, and the numerical advantage of the Zulus was overwhelming. Durnford's unit held out just long enough to allow some of his men to escape and inform the nearby British camps. Durnford and his remaining forces were killed not long after. The chest and right horns had completely inundated the British forces and the defensive line collapsed. With no formation, the last British soldiers held out until their ammunition was spent and they were eventually killed by the Zulu army. At the end of the battle, the British army had lost over 1,300 soldiers, and the Zulus had lost about 1,000. This was a victory for the Zulus, but it would not be the last Anglo-Zulu battle, and later on the same day, another large Zulu force attacked the lightly defended British outpost at Rorke's Drift. A video about this battle can be found here.